Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. We are really have a very special guest with us today. Rabbi Steven Rosenberg's with us, and very interesting gentleman. He's actually hosted his own radio talk show. Then he got healed and doesn't do that anymore. He's pretty smart. He has dual residence in North Carolina and Texas. I have no idea how he pulls that off, but he's here on a very serious topic, and that's the rise of anti-Semitism throughout the United States. Rabbi, nice to have you, my friend. Good to see you.
It's nice to be here, too. And yes, I guess you can call me a recovering talk show host.
Yeah, well, I can get you counseling for that.
I'm sure there is.
Well, listen, this is a very interesting topic and one that I am quite alarmed. What do you think is the reason why we still have a high rate of anti-Semitism in America?
Well, I have to tell you, this was a surprise to me. The Anti-Defamation League, which is one of the real stalwart organizations in the United States, which really track not only the defamation and not only anti-Semitism, but really anti-bias and anti-racism of any group or culture, did this survey this past year, and in fact it came out in May. And if I could just cite some of these things, there were 11 questions this was a massive survey done around the world, and there were 11 questions asked about some really age-old stereotypes with respect to Jews, including classical stereotypes about Jewish power, loyalty, money, and behavior. And what they found was really interesting. And more than one quarter of those surveyed, about 26% across the world, harbor some anti-Semitic attitudes. And it represents 1.9 million people in the world, which I'll tell you, this next part totally blew my mind. Of that, only 54% of those polled had ever heard of the Holocaust.
Whoa.
Yeah, that really, really got my attention.
Wow.
And a majority of those people also believe that if it did happen, the numbers of not only 6 million Jews, but of the millions and millions of more than 6 million Jews, 1.5 million were children, they believe those are historically inaccurate.
You know, given those numbers, Rabbi, one more generation and the Holocaust never existed.
And one of the things we forget about the Holocaust, and we focus on 6 million Jews, which is a horrific number. It was the only time in history where a country systematically tried to wipe out a people. But there were Catholics killed, there were Gypsies killed, and there were many different groups killed. People were euthanized, and we forget about. There's a line that I'm sure you've used before, or you've heard before. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, and we see this again and again in the name of hate. We just had this horrific crime in Las Vegas where two Las Vegas police officers were gunned down in cold blood from people who were ostensibly of a hate group. And I think that one of the things that we are looking at, and I think it's a barometer not just of anti-Semitism, but I think you can paint a broader brush with this, is the lack of tolerance around the world. And, we see that also in the Christian world. It doesn't get reported very often, but look at all the Christian communities, Christian Catholic communities in Muslim lands that are under siege.
Yeah. You kind of wonder if the next Holocaust isn't against Christians. It's seemingly heading that way. But you're saying 1 in 4 adults are anti-Semitic. What are they blaming the Jews for?
Well, I'll go through this with you. It's really it's striking, and this is what some of the findings were. There was a belief that Jews have too much power in business and in banking, and that Jews control You know, let's first of all let's face a fact. Less than, the Jewish population of the world is less than 0.5%. So we are a very small group compared to 1 billion Catholics and 1 billion Muslims. We really are a very small group. Only about 2% of the United States. And so they also there was a belief that Jews had too much power in the business world, that the media controlled mainly by Jews, which is really, if you think about it today, and you know this better than I do, the media world today is controlled mainly by corporations.
Right.
And so the thing that puzzles me is we live in a world today of incredible access to information, unparalleled at any other time. And you would think that these numbers would be going down. And I had really had thought that in the 21st century, here we are, we finally elected an African-American president. We have, I thought that maybe we have come to the point where race and religion and culture don't matter anymore. And I was sadly wrong.
All right. This is a huge topic, and we're going to run out of time. But what do you think we can do to change people's attitudes and thinking? I mean, in this whole world of so-called tolerance, we have these horrible numbers. What can we do to turn this thing around?
I think information is power, and I think people fear what they don't know. And we live in a really interesting age where, and you said a very good point before, but I'd like to elaborate on. This is the last generation there will be any Holocaust survivors around. And if you wanted to see see how that played out, look at the 70th anniversary of D-Day. If you saw any of that footage,
right,
and those the elderly soldiers, the last ones of World War II, who were in their late 80s and 90s, Holocaust survivors are about that age too. And we are, as you said, we are one generation away from it completely being relegated to the history books. And so I think part of it is education. I think part of it is tolerance and understanding. And I truly believe that we fear what we don't know. I have to tell you, where I have hope is in the youth. And when you see whether they're Jewish youth or Christian youth or Catholic youth, and you see them at various venues interacting with each other, and this group, I believe, the people who are maybe 20 and under, 25 and under, have a very different view of the world. And I think, hopefully, a much more positive view. They don't see the world in colors. They don't see the world divided in cultures and religions as their parents do, to a certain extent. And I think that if we can nurture this group of kids, regardless of whatever their background is, that's where we start.
Wow, that's very positive, and I'm glad to hear you say that. If the next generation or two generations behind us can pick this up and bridge the gap, there's great hope. And I'm sensing that. I'm sensing that in the millennials. They are colorblind, but they do want truth. They look for it. They seek for it, and they can get it because of the digital platforms that are out there. But Rabbi, I have to tell you, I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and I know people that have been to the one in Washington, D.C., and when they come out of there, they're stunned, absolutely stunned. It's a life-changing experience.
And we need more of that. And that's also, I think, part of it is the fact that we need, that's why these museums are there. There's also a wonderful, there's an amazing one also in New York. Near the Battery, all the way down the south tip of New York. But we need these places for people to come and bear witness and to understand that not only do these things happen, but the Holocaust is not just a Jewish problem; it's a human problem.
Right.
and I think that we need to, as a world, understand that these things will keep on happening. So we understand, there's a great quote that Golda Meir said. They said, when will there be peace in the world, especially in Israel and the Middle East? And she said, there'll be peace when the people that oppose us love their children more than they hate us.
Wow, beautifully said. One quick question, and we'll have to go, and I'll get you back. It appears that this administration isn't supporting Israel like we'd like to see it, especially those in the faith community. We want to see a tighter bond. Our only ally in the East is Israel, but this administration seems to be fostering the numbers that you're talking about here by turning its back and supporting it. What's your response?
I have to tell you, I met with Barack Obama, then Senator Obama, when he was running for president. This is back in Texas. A group of clergy did. And we talked with him about it. And I was not particularly pleased with his responses then. And I think his attitude with respect to the Middle East, especially with Israel, has been detached at best. Mm-hmm. I think that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and every president, from Harry Truman all the way to this current president, have benefited greatly by a relationship with Israel and a strong Israel. And I think that we live in a world now. If you look at the neighborhood where Israel resides, it's a tough neighborhood right now. You've got all these countries, whether it's Syria, Libya, Egypt, which are in different stages of turmoil. And, we have this sliver of a democracy the size of New Jersey, resting around all of these Arab countries, who many of them would be very happy to see it go. I think that the only thing that I can think of is the fact that there needs to be more positive engagement. And I don't think you're going to see it with this president. I think that it has been pro forma at best.
Yeah, sadly, I think you're right. Rabbi, it's been an honor to have you. Thank you. And let's connect again. Shalom, my friend.
Shalom, my friend. You too. And if I may say it so, you have a wonderful program. Really enjoy watching it.
All right, let's do it again soon, okay?
Look forward to it.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, welcome back. Kind of continuing in the same theme that we had with our previous guest with Rabbi Steven Rosenberg. Earlier, we had a chance to talk to Anita Dittman, and she's authored a book entitled Trapped in Hitler's Hell. Now, Anita is a Holocaust survivor, and her first time on television and Skype interview ever was with us just a few days ago. So join me now as we talk to Anita Dittman about her being a Holocaust
Anita,
survivor.
hi, how are you?
Hi. Oh, I'm fine. And how are you?
Oh, fine. You're special already because my mother's name is Anita.
Oh.
Nice to have you with us. Quite a story. First of all, try to give us your life story in a nutshell.
Well, I was born in East Germany in 1927, and the city's name was Breslau. My mother came from a somewhat Orthodox Jewish background, and my Aryan father, as Hitler called them, was an atheist. My mother had kind of deviated from her religion that she was on, and So there was no Christian nurture in the family whatsoever. So my older sister and I didn't know what we were missing, but we were so comfortably wealthy. I was born with a very agile body, and so my mother enrolled me in ballet at age 4. My teacher saw my talent, and she said, "Girl, I'll make you into a prima ballerina, and someday you will just have a wonderful life." And she predicted all the perks that I could have, and I was enchanted by that and gave it my all. And ballet became the center of my life.
Wow.
When I was in everything, the first 5.5 years of my life were very easy, very ordinary. But when Hitler came to power, everything changed. Wow. Hitler hated the Jews with a passion, and they were at the top of the list of undesirables. And yes, the scene of my life became drastically different.
Now, what happened at the age of 7?
That was wonderful. I had been going to church. I had been going to church with some friends that kids played with me several times, and they invited me to an Easter morning service. And it was in that little church that Christ came into my life. It was nothing overly dramatic. It was real. It was not a child's fantasy, and it made me realize that losing my ballet was nothing compared to the joy I had with me having Christ in my life. And I tried to share that with my mother and my older sister, but they weren't ready for that. They just laughed at it and thought it was a childish fantasy. And I kept telling them, no, it's real, but they didn't come to that later on.
So your mother did convert? Did your mother convert?
Eventually, when I was about 11 years old,
Wow.
A pastor of the inner city church, who was a very confessional pastor, who didn't sell out to the Nazis, he invited us to come, and he didn't force us, give us a Bible. And it was after a few months of listening to him and seeing him display Christ in his life, because of his love for the Jewish people. He was already on the blacklist of the Gestapo, but he just kept on loving the Jewish people, inviting them to church, and many people came to know Christ through him, and my mother was one of them. And I get kind of creepy when I talk about it, because finally she realized what I was trying to share with them at the time was real and not a fantasy, and she apologized to me. The light is going out.
Oh, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. Now, when did Hitler come to power? How old were you when Hitler came to power?
5.5, and
Okay.
I was exactly 5.5 when Hitler came to power.
Okay.
And my father left us early on because he didn't want to be married to a Jew, and that jeopardized our safety, because people who remained married to their Aryan partners were slightly protected, not completely, but this was devastating. And he just took off, and for a while he was gone completely, and finally he came back, and of course he sided with the Nazis. So my mother told me early, she said, when you see your father, when you had your visiting privileges, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything, just listen to him talk.
Wow.
So I couldn't trust my own father.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. When were you sent to a concentration camp? What were the conditions then?
Well, it was pretty bad. We were about, I would say, 300 of us, and I was not picked up. I had a chance to contact my mother in the camp and let her know that I have to go to a camp. My mother already was in a camp, a different one in Theresienstadt, Czechoslovakia. This was a camp strictly for people who had one Aryan and one Jewish parent. Oh. And I was one of the younger ones. The ages were age 14 to age 65, and I was 17 then. About 150 women or more housed in a barn, a filthy old cow barn that had never been cleaned out. It was just covered with fresh straw. And our toilet facility was impossible. It was a ditch outside in the back of the barn, and the washing facility was a faucet of cold water. And so the authorities gave us little enamel pans that we could wash. The men were lived under similar circumstances, little ways from the women. It was not a camp that was surrounded by barbed wire, but there was very, very strict supervision because we had many SS people watching over us. We were awakened about 4 in the morning. We were counted and recounted and insulted verbally, and then reminded that we should be so proud to work for the Führer, which they called Hitler, which means leader. And we got a cup of imitation coffee in a little enamel cup. And the food was a piece of bread with margarine. And then we were loaded up with digging equipment, picks, shovels, and spades. And then we were marched off. It was August, it was hot. So we worked digging ditches. When we came to the place where we were digging ditches, we were told that these ditches are to be used by the country to trap the tanks that would come into the country, although Hitler was claiming he was winning. We worked about 8 to 10 hours digging ditches. The ditches were probably about 10 to 15 feet wide, about 8 feet. Anyway, they were big enough to trap the tanks.
Right.
We were not allowed to talk to each other, but those of us that were Christians, while we were digging, we couldn't stop talking about Jesus. And pretty soon we had a little band of Christians, and we would meet after 10 hours of hard labor and a skimpy, watery meal. We had free time, and after we had our bath in the little enamel pan, we could then have free time. And we would meet in the corner of the barn, and we had a wonderful time praying for one another. It was very strengthening.
Whoa. So how long were you in the concentration camp?
Actually, only 6 months. And then it was winter. Then 5 of us girls were able to escape with God's help. We prayed all night long the night before that it was God's will to free us from our persecutors. Please help us, Lord. And he did. It's so remarkable. People have to read it. It's so remarkable how God engineered the escape. Only a God like ours can engineer something that's perfect.
Well, tell us about the escape.
Yeah. The night before, when we were marching home from work, we had been moved to a different location where we were working in the forest, and our camp was surrounded by a lot of woodland. And in the evening before, our women's quarters were locked up so tight, we could only look through tiny little glass windows to see what was going on out there. The Russians had come so close that we could hear it. We could smell the war, we could hear it, we could feel the vibrations beneath. And that night is when God worked for us the next morning. We were all rounded up the next morning early, without any food, without anything, and all the women, we were separated from the men. And we were driven off with, what do they call it? Big wagons that were pulled by horses and chauffeured by Polish prisoners of war that worked like slaves for German farms.
Wow. And
we were whisked off. And finally, after a long ride, like hard, old ride, it was to be exact, February 11th, 1945. At that moment, when we came into the camp, our leader said, you know, I need 2 volunteers because we have to go to the manufacturing place where that own this place, that we need keys, we need lamps, and so forth. So my friend and I, my best friend and I, we volunteered. And this Polish prisoner of war took us off, and so we bribed him with cigarettes that we had saved and some money that we had stored away. And there are 5 of us. 3 of them escaped through the woods, and we were going to meet them at the railroad station. And my friend Hella and I took the ride with a Polish prisoner of war, and after we gave him cigarettes and some money, he whipped the horses. We almost flew. It was so amazing.
Wow.
And finally, this isn't finished yet. And so then we passed a railroad station. He let us off, and there were German soldiers, and they were standing there, and there were flatbeds that were pulled by a big train, several, and there were tanks on the flatbed. And I went over to one of the soldiers. I looked the most Aryan. I had blonde hair like my father's side of the family. And I said to him, you know, there are 5 of us here. We try to get away from the Russians, which was true too. Where are you going? What is on the flatbed? What tanks are they? Oh, they said they're slightly demolished tanks, Russian tanks, and we're shipping them to Fürstenwalde near Berlin, and the train will be leaving soon. Oh, we said, could we possibly, ride with you? Because we're trying to escape from the Russians. And he said, well, let me ask my CO. And he said, excuse me, Larry, the light is out again. I look better in the dark anyway.
Yeah. Let me do this. Said, Anita, let me do this, Anita. I got to take a quick break, and we'll come back and have you finish that story, okay?
It's so fantastic. I got to finish. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Anita Dittman, sure. And she's the author of the book Trapped in Hitler's Hell and a DVD. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
All right, we're back with our very special guest today, Anita Dittman. She's the author of this book called Trapped in Hitler's Hell. A young Jewish girl's discovers the Messiah faithfulness in the midst of the Holocaust. And let me encourage you to check it out. The foreword of this book, by the way, is our good friend Ray Comfort, and it's put up by WND Books. That's WorldNet Daily, so you may want to check it out at the bookstores or online. And be listening. We're going to give away a copy of the book and the DVD here in just a few moments. Anita, before we went to the break, you were giving us the fascinating story of how you were able to break free, and you're at the train station. Tell us what happened from then on.
Okay, when the soldier came back from talking to the CO, he smiled and he said, you can ride with us if you don't mind sharing a compartment that's made for 3 with the 2 soldiers. You're welcome to ride with us. And of course, we were deliriously happy. Only we had to be very careful how we reacted. And it was amazing how we fit into it. Of course, none of us were overweight after years of starvation. And the whistle blew, and we were gone. And God finally stopped the train near Fürstenwalde, and the soldiers let us out. There were lots of little things to be told, but the book writes.
Yeah. How did you
By
find?
the way, Jan Markel wrote the story. I'm the subject.
Oh, how did you find your mother after that?
Oh, that's a very long story.
But you did find her, right?
Yes, I did find her, and she we hadn't heard anything from each other for over 11 months.
Wow.
It was a wonderful reunion, and as you can see, I'm getting kind of emotional about it when I think about it, because it was so amazing because of the things that happened before we saw each other, that both of us stayed alive.
Wow. Anita, you've come through a piece of world history that few will ever know and experience like you have. You have some warnings for America. You sense some things going on in our country that literally have given you nightmares. What would you like to say to our audience about that?
Pray. Pray. Pray and have faith in God. Even though things are going to get worse, we have a wonderful God. He can carry us through everything. But people need to listen. They need to learn. And also, I think they have to be informed about things. And with me, of course, I'm more than informed. I lived through it. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of similarities, because more and more is done by the government, less is done by the people. It reminds me very much of what happened even before Hitler took over. I was very young, but I could still see it. And of course, my mother told me a lot of things, but these signs, and of course, Hitler took over when Germany was going through a financial crisis. The economy was bad. And unfortunately, also, when I came to this country in 1946, June of 1946, the Christians could speak freely, and there really was freedom of speech. Well, more and more and more is controlled by the government, what we can say and how we can say. And also, Hitler, because of the churches were weak and they were blinded, he took over the churches too. Many pastors who didn't go along, like my own pastor, were persecuted, and some of them were even killed, like Bonhoeffer and Niemöller. There are so many similarities. You have to be so careful nowadays what you say, and even for pastors, they are restricted what they can say.
Yeah.
Government is, like I say, government is completely taking over, not only the medical situation, but also in our lives. There's less freedom of speech, and that's a danger.
I can't imagine what's in your heart living this for the second time.
Well, I tell you very honestly, when the government first started this last term, or the term before, I had nightmares about the Nazis.
Wow. And
I wasn't the only one. There are people that were born in America that had the same thing happen. I don't want to be too drastic what I say about our president, but when he was campaigning and the things that were promised, the wonderful promises and everything, unfortunately, we have become a very, very materialistically money-minded society. And that happened the same in Germany. Hitler made wonderful promises. Everything, we're going to live in a utopia. But that did not happen. Yes, those that joined the Nazi Party, they had a lot of benefits. But when the Jews were persecuted, and they say in a country where the Jews are being persecuted, the Christians come right afterwards. I have a lot of things that I could tell you. I'm a speaker. I share my testimony. And when I first started out 35 years ago, I was invited to any kind of school. Nowadays, I'm not. I was told many times, yes, you can come and speak, but you got to take Jesus out of it. And I said, no, I can't, because he's my Lord and Savior. And the very fact that I am alive and that I have the ability to come here and talk about it, I said, that's all due to Christ. And he's the center of my life, and I can't deny him. Well, then I'm sorry you can't come. And more and more and more the schools. And soon, when we had 9/11, the doors of the schools opened wide, and prayers at ball games and everything. But as soon as we were safe again, so to speak, this changed back. Government has too much control. When I learned about the government and everything, it says government for the people. But I don't know. I question that.
Anita, you are a delight and an inspiration, and I want to say thank you. I understand this is the first time you've done anything with Skype. You were wonderful, yes. And you are an inspiration.
I didn't even know what's.
Oh, you did a great job. Well, listen, thank you, and thank you for being so transparent and open. We pray God's blessings and peace to you, and thank you for the warning. I would hope that every Christian and every church leader would pick up your book and read it.
Yes, very true.
Okay. Blessings.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks for being with us.
And God bless you.
Well, powerful story to say the least, and I hope that you would go up to the Dove website, theDove.us, or if you have Roku, go to our Roku site and share that segment with family and friends of Anita Dittman. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at the Dove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on the Dove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. You know, about a week or so ago, we had the opportunity and the honor of talking to Avi Davis. He's an attorney and a journalist, a senior fellow with the American Freedom Alliance, and he was putting together the Failing Grades Conference and be meeting with some border regions as it relates to what's happening with academia, especially at the university level. Well, let's see what happened. Avi, nice to see you again. How you doing?
It's great to see you too.
Well, you're still taking in oxygen, so I guess you survived. What happened?
It was quite an undertaking. It was really a fabulous conference.
What happened? What was the response?
Well, the conference was really focused on it was based on I think I told you last time, the California Association of Scholars report, the crisis of competence in teaching on the University of California campuses, the 9 campuses. And it began that way with an address by John Mills, who talked about the report and presented it to the audience. And we had an audience of close to 200. And then it advanced to a series of panels which addressed teaching, the quality of teaching, grade inflation. Then we had the politicization of the classroom, of course, and a very interesting psychological examination of why it is so difficult for liberals to accept conservative opinion on campus and elsewhere. Then Victor Davis Hanson spoke and delivered just a stunning address, and he really pilloried the university system and warned that it is leading to the possibility of totalitarian government in this country, because we're not producing young Democrats, we're producing people with very closed minds. Then we moved to a discussion of the trustees, what their role and responsibility is. We had an excellent panel with several regents both in Colorado and in California. Then, following that was a very interesting panel examining the explosion of online universities throughout the United States, which is a burgeoning area, fantastic opportunities now for both entrepreneurs and for students to develop educational channels for young people to learn basic skills and make them ready for the marketplace. And
Wow.
then finally, Herbert London delivered the final address of the day and talked about the future of the university. The second day was devoted to the development of a statement of principles, which I'd be happy to share with you, which addressed the way in which we feel the university must reform itself in order to be a relevant institution in the 21st century. And that was the conference.
Wow. How did the scholars respond to the original report?
Well, it for many people it was shocking. The report really details, John really brought out some anecdotes and some examples of the way in which teaching is conducted on university campuses these days. The high politicization, the bias, the prejudice, the unwillingness to counter opposing points of view or present opposing points of view, to give a balanced approach to any given topic. This is, of course, particularly so in the humanities, but increasingly in the sciences as well. And so the participants, and it weren't just scholars, of course, there were many lay people, ordinary citizens, people who were planning to send their kids to college next year. People respond, even though it's well known how politicized the campus has become and how politicized teaching has become, people are still shocked at the level of disregard for conservative points of view, alternative points of view. Forget about conservative, just alternative points of view. There's one point of view, and only one point of view that is presented.
Let me fast forward. Do you think that you were heard? Do you think the concerns and the evidence of the report was significant enough that they're going to allow for alternative points of view? Do you think this thing actually will begin to change?
I don't hold much hope for that. I'm sorry to say that. The report itself has been presented, and was presented to the regions nearly a year ago, and there is a long history now of communications between the regions, or between rather the bureaucracy, UC bureaucracy, and the California Association of Scholars, which can be actually accessed on the internet. I don't hold much hope for it because there is a mindset that considers the university as sacred ground, as there's a sort of the entire university is sort of embraced by a halo, as if it really cannot do anything wrong. One thing that I had never put together in my own mind were the words university and corruption. But I came away from the conference with that word firmly lodged in my brain. The university is a corrupt place. It's corrupt financially, with professors and administrators earning huge salaries without really having to work very, very hard, and without the threat of losing their jobs for failure of performance. It's corrupt politically because of the intense politicization of the classroom. So, this is when you have something so corrupt and you don't have a government or a media or any other institution willing to challenge it, and you don't have a citizenry willing to challenge it, the chances of change are remote. And that is why I'm so enthusiastic about the alternative forms of higher education which are emerging on the internet. Very, very enthusiastic because it will challenge the brick and mortar universities. It'll force them, with such high fees, tuition fees, for even public universities these days. Parents are wondering how they're going to be able to afford it.
So that is the hope. Online education is the hope. Online university is the hope, because at the end of the day, it's the pocketbook. But I'm also hearing you say, Avi, that you didn't walk away with any kind of hope that they would recognize that there should be at least a legitimate acceptance of alternative points of view. I mean, that just, it's so often what they do is they have these panels and conventions and conferences, and they have a feel-good moment, and they think, well, we've given time for that, but we're moving on.
Well, the hope that I walked away with was that the universities will become marginalized.
Yeah.
You know, I think that these are institutions which have become impregnable, because you know, the only people who really care about education are those who are sending their children to the institutions,
right.
You know, on a wide scale. And that only lasts for, say, 4 years. And then parents' interests move on. So there is a certain impregnability to the university, but there is a way to bypass them now, which is very exciting. And there's a prediction that of the 4,500 colleges in the United States, nearly 80% of them in 20 years will no longer exist.
Wow.
That's a pretty interesting statistic,
yeah.
because they're basically pricing themselves out of the market. They're making it impossible. I mean, students take on debt that has them writing checks to on their student loans into their 40s.
Yeah.
$250,000 in debt for the highest Ivy League universities. Nobody can afford to do that.
Yeah.
Nobody can live a life like that.
Yeah.
And so, change.
Wow. Listen, thanks for the update. I really appreciate your pioneering and stalwartness to go forward into this. Can people stay in contact with you through the American Freedom Alliance?
Yes, of course. They can sign up for our newsletter, the www.americanfreedomalliance.org. They can also access the website for the conference on our website. It's a mini website called Failing Grades, the Crisis in Teaching on Our University Campuses. And we'll have the video from the conference up there within a week.
Okay.
We've just issued the draft statement of principles, so they'll be able to see that as well.
All right. Avi, thanks. Thanks for hanging in there, pal, and let's stay in touch and see where this goes. But I think there is an alternative. It's called online universities, and hopefully that'll purge the big boys a little bit, huh?
Let's hope so. You know, they deserve our encouragement.
All right. God bless you, my friend. Talk soon, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.